I'm going to keep this straightforward. No fancy section breaks or polished titles. I've always preferred the kind of posts you see on forums where people just tell it like it is, lay out the facts, and ask for honest judgment or advice. My parents split up when I was 6, and the way custody was handled after that shaped pretty much everything that came next. My dad took care of the logistics, money, school paperwork, pickups, drop-offs, all the boring but necessary stuff that kept life running smoothly. He was steady, predictable, the kind of parent who thrived on routine. Most of my time with him wasn't filled with big outings or deep talks. It was ordinary things, doing homework together, going to practice, grocery shopping, folding laundry, making dinner, cleaning up. We didn't need long speeches about responsibility. We just did what had to be done. My mom, on the other hand, said the divorce had shattered her. She told everyone my dad had cheated, and that she needed time for herself, to breathe, to see her friends, to have a life again. She refused to just sit at home alone. When I stayed with her, she'd usually head out in the evenings, leaving me to watch over my little brother, who was only 4. I'd go through the nightly checklist, what he needed for the next day, clothes laid out, laundry switched to the dryer, lunches packed, backpacks ready. By the time I turned 14, no one had to remind me to do any of that. I knew if I didn't handle it, no one else would. My brother was 10 by then, still needing rides, signed forms, lunches, clean clothes, and someone to make sure he actually went to bed. Mom would text from some bar, saying she'd be home soon, then another message an hour later, and then nothing. I learned early not to wait up for her. Losing sleep just meant bombing an exam the next day or falling asleep at practice, so I built my own system. I set alarms, memorized bus numbers, wrote down due dates and locker combos, even kept notes about when the clinic was open for my brother's asthma appointments. Dad never spoke badly about her, not once. He didn't pry into what was going on over there either, and I didn't tell him much. I knew that if he went to court, things might actually get worse. Custody schedules could change, arguments could flare up, and I'd be stuck in the middle all over again. I just wanted peace, even if it meant swallowing the truth. He paid support, showed up for us, and always asked if we were doing okay. I'd say yes, because that answer kept things calm and let me keep control of the little system I'd built to make our lives work. When people ask where the other adults in our family were during those years, I tell them. They were around, just powerless. The court order said what it said. Mom insisted she had everything under control, and I was the one quietly holding things together. Nobody wanted to tug at the loose thread that could unravel what tiny bit of stability we had. I tracked food and money like a professional. I memorized prices, read grocery flyers, and bought whatever I could stretch into multiple meals. I learned how to make cheap fast food feel like real dinners. If I kept a pan of rice in the fridge, I could throw together something halfway decent when I came home late without starting from scratch. None of it felt heroic. I'm not writing this to fish for compliments. It was just survival. It was what had to be done to keep us from living in a constant state of emergency. I missed parties and sleepovers because leaving my brother alone at night wasn't an option. I knew what it felt like to sit in the dark counting minutes, and I wasn't going to let him feel that too. By the time college came up near the end of high school, I already knew I couldn't move away. My brother still needed someone who'd actually show up every day. Dad asked if I wanted him to fight for more custody time, but I told him it probably wouldn't change anything. The last thing I wanted was another courtroom war. We agreed I'd go to community college, work nearby, and keep things stable until my brother was old enough to manage on his own. And I did exactly that. When he got older, got his license, and started staying mostly at Dad's place, I finally moved into a small apartment. I carried my habits from those years, always planning, always calculating. But for the first time, I could breathe. I wasn't standing at the window waiting for Mom's car, or stressing over whether we had enough left for groceries or school supplies before the next child support payment. Fast forward to now. I'm pregnant. My partner and I decided to throw a baby shower and invite both sides of my family. I figured it would be fine. It's just one day, focused on the baby, not the past. Diapers, bottles, food, laughter. No drama. I made it clear to my friend who hosted that we didn't want any speeches or corny games with a microphone, just a simple, short celebration. And honestly, for most of it, things went okay. My parents were in the same room without talking, which was good enough for me. I didn't expect miracles. I just wanted peace. But near the end, my mom joined a group and started telling this emotional story about how she'd raised 2 kids all by herself after my dad cheated and left. She said it loudly enough for everyone to hear, her voice trembling in just the right places, and she kept going, even as I felt my stomach twist. Dad was standing not far away, silent as always. People nodded along, clearly touched by her strength, and in that moment I realized that if I said nothing, I'd be silently agreeing with her version of our lives. A version that erased the countless nights, the exhaustion, and the work that both my father and I had put in. So the math in my head was simple. Either speak up now and set the record straight, or stay quiet and spend years correcting her lies in smaller conversations. I decided to go with the first option and spoke up. I told everyone clearly that I was the one who raised myself and my brother during those years, not my mother. I said my dad never abandoned us. He paid support, he showed up, and he stayed consistent. And if anyone wanted to know who actually cooked the meals, filled out school forms, handled pickups, called the bus line, sat in waiting rooms, met teachers, and made sure there was food on the table, they could talk to me. I said I wouldn't let my child grow up hearing a story that gave credit to someone who didn't do the work. My mom immediately said I was being disrespectful and ungrateful. She stormed out with her friends, clearly embarrassed, and didn't talk to me for 2 weeks after that. The next day, she sent me a long text saying I'd crossed a line, that I humiliated her in front of people, and that she wouldn't speak to me again until I apologized. I didn't reply, because apologizing for telling the truth would have dragged me backward, and I didn't want to go there again. I needed to focus on the baby, on getting ready for delivery, and setting up a system that would actually function once we brought our child home. So I built a schedule for visits and sent it to both sides of the family. I explained that visits could be shortened by arrangement. There'd be no unannounced drop-ins, and no one was allowed to post baby photos without our consent. My dad said he completely understood and asked if there was anything else he could do to help. My mom, meanwhile, stayed silent. About a week before my due date, she asked to meet for coffee near her place. I agreed, cautiously. She started by saying she'd been thinking about what happened at the shower and could see how her comments were unfair. She admitted she'd left us alone a lot of nights, and that she used bars and friends as her escape from the pain of the divorce. She said she'd been depressed, hollow, and ashamed. That hanging out at bars made her feel less alone, even if it was the wrong kind of company. She admitted she should have gone to therapy, but was too scared of being judged and too worried about the cost. Then she asked if I'd give her another chance, to let her be an involved grandmother and slowly rebuild trust. I told her I appreciated her acknowledging what happened, but I wasn't going to rewrite history for her comfort. If she wanted a place in our lives, it would have to be earned through small, steady actions over time. I told her I wouldn't be her therapist or caretaker and needed help. She should talk to a professional. I laid out clear boundaries for visits and said that if she broke them, we'd take a break from contact. She said she understood and started crying, but I didn't rush to comfort her. That's not my job anymore. A few days later, Dad stopped by with a bag of groceries and asked if I wanted to talk about what had happened. I told him about the conversation with Mom. He said he'd felt ashamed during the baby shower because he knew his affair had set everything in motion. He apologized for not pushing harder back then, when he realized Mom's house wasn't stable, but he was afraid that going to court would make things worse, like we'd lose time with him, or get caught in a bigger mess. We sat down for a while, and I told him that I didn't want to keep relitigating old decisions every time something happened. What mattered now was focusing on what this family needed in the present. He agreed, and said he'd do his best, and that if he ever started overcompensating out of guilt, I should call him out. I appreciated that. It showed awareness, and I really don't want to repeat the cycle where guilt leads to chaos, and I end up cleaning up after everyone's emotions. After the shower, a few relatives started asking questions. They'd heard different versions of the story over the years, and wanted clarity. I told them straight up that I wasn't trying to punish my mother, absolve my father, or rank their sins. I just wanted my child to grow up with an honest understanding of how things really were. No more blame stories, no more revisionist versions of the past. I told them that I'm open to people who show up and closed off to those who don't. And if anyone tries to pressure me into some emotional reconciliation arc just to make themselves feel better, they can stop right there. That's not my responsibility. Naturally, word got around. A few people messaged me afterward, asking what happened next, if my brother reached out, or if things got worse. My brother called me 2 days later. He said he froze during Mom's speech and regretted not speaking up to back me in the moment. That same night, he emailed her, telling her he agreed with me, that he remembered all those nights when I was the one taking care of everything, and that he wouldn't sit through any more stories that erased my work. He asked for a copy of the postpartum boundaries I'd made so he could help enforce them if people tried to cross lines while I was recovering. I sent him everything, the visiting hours, the consent rules for photos, and the no-posting policy. He told me he'd have my back in every situation, no matter what. As for the rest of the family, some cousins tried to get Mom's side of the story, and she told them she was done dealing with ungrateful kids. One cousin even wrote me this long message about how the divorce left Mom broke, and that going to bars for support was totally normal. I replied that socializing isn't the issue, abandoning your kids night after night is, and that I wasn't going to argue about it. Dad, for his part, didn't call her, or ask me to act as a go-between. He kept his focus on practical help, groceries, repairs, errands, and stayed out of the emotional politics, which I deeply appreciated. It helped prevent me from falling back into that exhausting middleman role I'd played my entire life. During the week after the shower, my husband and I finalized our plans for the birth and the first couple of weeks at home. We set up a simple schedule, days for meal drop-offs, quiet days with no visits, and a list of small tasks for anyone who asked how they could help. We wanted it in writing because people always say, just tell us what you need, and then show up, hold the baby, and chat while the dishes pile up. So we made it clear. If you come over, don't just hold the baby, help us keep the household running. Fold laundry, take out the trash, grab groceries. We sent that plan to both families and stuck to it. We kept things simple. Anyone who followed the plan was invited back, and anyone who didn't got fewer visiting hours. It wasn't about punishment, it was about keeping our small household calm and protected during a really fragile time. After that conversation, my mom started texting me, promises that she'd respect the rules I'd set. No bringing guests, no making speeches, no sharing photos online. I told her I also needed to confirm she'd show up and leave on time, and that she'd ask before picking up the baby. She said she understood. I kept our communication brief and practical, because long conversations with her usually spiraled into old arguments that went nowhere. I wanted every exchange to be about something specific, something I could look back on later and measure. Then the big day came. Labor went about how the doctor said it would. Uncomfortable, exhausting, but predictable. We kept the delivery room calm, no surprise visitors, no chaos. My dad came during visiting hours, quietly sat down, held the baby, asked what we needed, and then went to our house to help get a few things ready. My mom came the next day during her scheduled time. She brought a small bag of diapers and wipes, and a short note saying she wanted to do better from now on. She asked if she could hold the baby, and I said yes. She sat there gently rocking the baby, not bringing up the past, not mentioning the baby shower, not even my dad. She didn't reach for her phone without asking, and after about 20 minutes, she handed the baby back and said she'd let me rest. It was honestly the first time in years that I didn't feel like I had to manage her emotions, or steer the energy in the room to keep things under control. Once we were home, we settled into our schedule. People came and left at their designated times, and helped with specific chores. We kept a chart on the fridge, feeding times, diaper changes, medications, small to-do tasks. That list turned out to be a lifesaver. Whenever someone asked, what can I do to help? We could just point at the board instead of trying to think of something while juggling a crying newborn. When Mom came during her time slot, she actually asked what she could do. I told her to fold laundry, wash bottles, and wipe down the counters. She did exactly that. No interruptions, no unsolicited advice, no attempts to take over. She even set a timer on her phone and left right when it went off. After each visit, I made a note of how it went, because I wanted to measure progress by actual behavior, not wishful thinking. Update 2. People started asking whether I planned to go to therapy with my mom, or try to push her into getting help. I told them no. I wasn't going to manage her healing. But I did tell her that if she wanted to pursue therapy, I could send her a few names of therapists and a link to an intake portal. That was the extent of my involvement. I sent her a short list that matched her insurance and asked her to let me know once she'd scheduled something, if she wanted to. About 2 weeks later, she texted that she'd done her intake, attended her first session, and found it really hard. She said the therapist had asked how she coped after the divorce and what effect that had on us. And for the first time, she admitted she'd built up this false version of events, one where she saw herself as the sole reason we survived, even though that wasn't the truth. I told her I appreciated her honesty, and would watch how her actions lined up with her. I also laid out one more boundary, about childcare. For now, only my dad, my brother, and 2 close friends are allowed to handle the baby without me present. My mom can visit and help with chores when I'm there, but that's it. If she stays consistent for several months, we can revisit things later. She said she understood and asked if she could take the stroller for a short walk, with me. I agreed. We walked 1 loop around the block together, and it went fine. She didn't ask for more, which honestly meant a lot because pushing for more would have set us back. Eventually, the topic of money came up. Mom offered to help financially, so I suggested something practical, a small monthly transfer into the savings account we'd set up for the baby's future. I also asked her not to buy random baby items without checking with us first, since space and structure matter more than piles of stuff. She agreed and started sending small transfers, bringing consumable things like wipes and formula instead of big gifts. During visits, she sometimes reads aloud from a children's book while I rest, which is more useful than any grand gesture. I've realized I value quiet, reliable help over performative acts of support. As for Dad, I told him straight up that I didn't want him grading Mom's progress on a curve, just because he still feels guilty about the affair. I asked him not to praise her for basic behavior, or expect me to express gratitude. He said he understood. He's been great about keeping things simple. No contact with her, no emotional commentary, just focusing on errands, repairs, rides, and things that make daily life easier. When he finishes a task, he writes it on the board, and moves on. It's efficient, clean, and it keeps everyone out of each other's emotional orbit. A few relatives have started asking whether I'll keep in touch with extended family, who still have strong opinions about the past. Some have already told me I should forgive quickly, because life is short. I told them straight out that I'm not running a forgiveness marathon. There's no invisible countdown or deadline where everything magically resets. Right now, I'm raising a newborn and trying to keep our home calm and functional. Anyone who contributes to that peace is welcome. Anyone who stirs things up isn't. I make the rules clear, by text, in person, however it needs to be said. Once the boundaries are set, I don't argue or negotiate. People either adjust or drift away, and honestly, I'm fine with either outcome. Update 3. A real test of those rules came during our baby's naming ceremony at my partner's family home. Both of my parents were invited, but only for a short visit. My partner's relatives wanted something intimate, a small gathering where people could offer kind words, share a meal, and leave peacefully. We told everyone the same ground rules ahead of time. No speeches, no toast about the past, no dramatics. Before the event, my mom asked if she could say a short blessing. I told her no, we weren't doing open mics, and she could save any heartfelt words for her own time. On the day of the ceremony, she actually followed through. She came on time, kept to herself, and helped serve food instead of hovering around my in-laws trying to rewrite history. My dad showed up on time too, sat beside my brother, and stayed quiet. Halfway through the gathering, one of my partner's relatives made a kind comment, complimenting both of my parents for raising me. I could feel the energy shift, the familiar expectation that the older generation would take the floor and deliver a speech. My mother started to open her mouth, but I met her eyes, shook my head, and said quietly, "We're keeping this focused on the baby." She stopped, sat back down. My dad stayed silent. The moment passed, and the event moved on. It may sound small, but for us, that was huge. An old pattern almost resurfaced, but didn't. A week later came another test. Mom arrived 15 minutes late for her scheduled visit and asked to stay later to make up the lost time. I said no. The end time matters. It's when the baby naps, eats, and we regroup. She blamed traffic and asked me to be flexible. I told her traffic is part of life, and the rule stands. Start and end times are fixed. If she wants more time, she can earn it by consistently showing up on time first. She accepted that and left when she was supposed to. I logged it as another data point, because follow-through matters more than promises. People often ask if I plan to rebuild a deeper relationship with her someday. My answer is simple. I'm not basing my relationships on hope anymore. I evaluate people on their behavior over time. That said, I have noticed small steps. She keeps her hands busy when she's here, folding laundry, cleaning bottles, without expecting praise. She hasn't tried to post photos or tell the shower story again. She's kept up with therapy. She avoids fighting with my dad. Those are the steps I can acknowledge while still holding my boundaries. My brother, meanwhile, has embraced his new role as an uncle in the healthiest way imaginable. He comes by on weekends, runs errands, cooks a big pot of food, labels containers, and fills our fridge so we have meals for days. He holds the baby exactly as instructed, and tells me to go nap while he tidies up. I told him seeing him like this, free of the old pressure he used to carry, means more to me than I can explain. He said he feels the same, that it's a relief to finally have a family moment without having to hold it all together for someone else. People have asked if I'll ever consider my mother's apology enough. The truth is, apologies don't mean much to me unless they're backed by long-term consistency. I'm not keeping score, but I am keeping track, because when I stop tracking, I end up lost in other people's emotions, doing emotional labor that isn't mine. I'm done with that. I won't raise my child in that kind of fog. Our home will stay predictable, calm, and safe, and anyone who wants to be part of it will have to match that energy. Since this is Reddit, and people usually ask for a verdict, I'll pose one question instead of looking for judgment. I'd appreciate feedback on 2 decisions I'm considering. The first, should I let my mom take the baby for a short stroller walk alone if she continues to show up on time and follow the rule? I'm hesitant. Once she's outside, I can't control what she says to strangers, or if she decides to snap a photo and share it around. I can set boundaries, but enforcing them outside our home is tricky. I'm leaning toward extending her in-home hours first before adding more. The second dilemma, should I invite both my parents to the same future events, birthdays, school performances, or alternate them? I'm leaning toward alternating. Having them both together tends to invite speeches, side comments, and tension. That's not the environment I want for my child's early years. Update 4. 2 months went by, and Mom mostly kept her therapy appointments. She missed 2, gave notice for one, but not the other. I didn't reschedule the no-show. Instead, I pushed her next visit by a week as a natural consequence. My time isn't an open slot that people can fill or drop at will. She accepted it without complaint. After that, she started arriving early and waiting in her car until the exact start time. I took that as a sign she finally understood the structure. During visits, she stuck to chores and didn't try to manage the baby unless I specifically asked. Once, she adjusted the swaddle, and I asked her to stop. She didn't argue or repeat it. Then came a setback. At a family dinner outside our home, she started telling someone next to her that she'd done whatever she had to do to survive after the divorce, and that people don't understand the price of betrayal. I caught part of the conversation from across the room, stood up, and walked over. I told her that topic was off limits, and that if she kept going, we'd leave. She said she was just making conversation. I told her it still violated the rule. No retelling history in public spaces. We said our goodbyes and left with the baby. Later that night, I emailed her saying visits were suspended for 2 weeks, and that one more incident would reset her progress to 0. The next day, she apologized and promised to do better. When the pause ended, she came to her next visit and followed every rule. My dad, on the other hand, has stayed steady. No commentary about mom, no comparisons, no attempts to outshine her or make up for the past with big gestures. He keeps things simple. Shows up, helps where needed, leaves when it's time. That's all I ask. Once, while I was feeding the baby, he started to express regret about the affair. I told him I didn't have the bandwidth for that conversation right then. He said, "No problem," and started washing bottles instead. That was that. I've had to remind a few relatives to stop asking for just one nice family photo of all of us together. I don't do that. I take separate pictures. I don't post them, and I don't allow anyone else to either. When people say they want a picture for memories, I tell them my priority is my child's stability, not their nostalgia. I don't apologize for it. I say it calmly and move on. The fewer words I use, the fewer chances there are for someone to twist them. I've learned that silence, structure, and consistency are what keep peace intact, and that's exactly what I'm building here.